So in the last video, we talked about why it's so important to get a playable, realistic, and interesting VST sound and set it up so that when you're playing live, you capture most of what your emotion and humanity into the track inside your DAW, and so that you have to worry less about editing later. So you're capturing more of what you want to start with and having to do less fixing up later. But today we're going to talk about, why it's so important in the next stage, that when you have your notes inside your DAW, why it's so important to pick the right VST or sample player and have enough flexibility to then shape those notes to exactly where you want to take that track. So this may sound like an advertisement for the VSL, but it just happens to be the player that I've used and researched and found that it gives me so much flexibility, and it gives me what I need to shape my notes and get the articulations I want. And so let's talk about what's important in a sample player. And if you're shopping for a sample player, or you're at the stage where you're just overwhelmed by all the different choices, and you're new at this and you're afraid that you're going to jump in and pay $500 and get into a platform that you later found isn't what you wanted, maybe this will help you to realize what you may need in the future. So these are the things to look for in a sample player, which will come in handy. You want to be able to have, of course, a lot of articulations, but before we even get to articulations, you want a platform that allows you to pick any instrument imaginable. As far as orchestral instruments, the VSL has got to be one of the best, covering all aspects of instruments that you can imagine that are orchestral, from different types of trumpets. Just quickly, I'll go to the special editions, which give you not so many of articulation choices, but they give you a huge selection of the types of instruments that they have on offer. And then later you can buy more specialized packs. But just as an example, the oboes, the French Plus, the Vienna types, the Plus version with extra articulations, and all kinds of types of oboes, clarinets. I mean, vast array of instruments to start with, right? And I could go on and on, but it just offers every type of instrument that you could probably want. But then, of course, the articulation. So once you pick an instrument, you want a platform that offers comprehensive and deep sampling of that instrument with many velocity layers and many articulations for each one of those instruments. All right, so having said that, that's kind of the basics. But beyond that, you want the ability to then take these articulations and fine-tune them quickly and to shape it exactly the way you want. And I've talked about some of these aspects before in other videos, but I thought it'd be good to focus it all on one video so that somebody new to this could say, hey, oh, great. Now I know a little bit more on what to look for if I'm going to jump in and on one platform or pick a different platform. So you want the ability to then pick a staccato or whatever articulation, but you also, what you're looking for at this point, number one, is attack and release. Does your platform or player allow you to shape the attack and release really quickly and easily? Is very important. Just as an example, we'll take this, we'll take a long note, legato, fast legato as an example. If I press the note, you hear a legato, which is meant to play a note, meant to play with other notes, or you could hear, listen to a sustain. Same thing, a longer note. But what if, as an example, I like the sustain articulation and it's fitting well with my notes on my track. I just wish it had it was more rhythmic, not so long, and I could make it a little bit more sharper or less sustained. So you could easily, in this case, because we do have the attack and release, you could lessen the release on your sustain articulation, and then it becomes a little less long and more staccato-like in the articulation. Same with like a legato. You can change that release up and down. So if you do want a long sustained note for romantic notes where you want them to ring out and they're very slow and long and lasting and sustaining, or you can have it more almost staccato-like where it's very suited. You don't want to cut off and just have a quick cut off, but you want to just manipulate it so that it's going to respond to shorter notes, but you still retain, you don't have to change articulations. There we go. So now that legato is going to act more like a staccato. And then also to be able to change the reverse. So if I go back to here, if I have a short note and a staccato, it may be too choppy, too rhythmic, and instead of going to a détaché or a longer note, I simply want to back off the attack a little bit with this slider. I can adjust that, and so now it will fit into the track, and I can still use it for whatever fast short notes, but I just backed off the attack a little bit to make it just smoothly fit in a little better. And it's that type of micro adjustment that you want in your sample player, number one. So attack and release, very important. And also the ability to automate that on any type of controller with any kind of automation and envelopes is another thing very handy. Okay, so next thing would be time and tempo and how your notes, there might be a time where you have some special phrases, runs, crescendos, or any group of notes that you need to be in specific time with your DAWs time. So you want to be able to have your samples and articulations and special runs and phrases all to be able to stretch faster, slower, and to be in sync with your DAWs tempo. And in this case with the VSL, you can simply turn on that stretching engine and it'll sound good within reason. You can adapt any of these special runs and or phrases to adapt. You could have a crescendo, which will last a lot longer or a lot shorter, depending on what you need and the tempo of your song. So another aspect that's really handy is the ability to place your instrument anywhere in your hall or the environment you're working in, to be able to place it anywhere quickly and not have to worry about panning and using reverbs and early reflections and pre-delays to try to place it behind the oboes or left of the violins and have to work that all out. And you want to just be able to grab an instrument and say, okay, in case of VSL, today I want my violins to play here, so I would have them go to, where the strings would be, so we could just double click and now the violins would be here. Or you could go very specifically and say you want solo strings, actual placement where the first solo violin would be. So now the violin is going to be placed and panned, and it's going to be the depth and panning is going to be exactly where you would expect the first violins would be in a real orchestra. But just as quickly, you could say, no, today I want that violin player to be way back on the wall, back to where the percussion is might be. So, but it's that quick to use an impulse response and just double click and place it where you want it in an actual orchestra without having to worry about panning or reverbs and delays and trying to push it back in time. So very important to have quick placement in your structure environment. Comes in really handy. And of course, to have the abilities to add reverbs, early reflections, pre-delays, and all that is a given, and that's another aspect. But just quick placement with impulse responses, very handy to place your instrument wherever you want. Another thing to look for is the ability to take an articulation, and as we've discussed, we could fine-tune it with attack and release. But what if you wanted you know, you wanted more attack. If you notice with this slider, it allows you to back off the attack, but it doesn't allow you to give more attack. I can't push the slider and give 120 attack. Even though you can also adjust the attack with this exact envelope here, and you can adjust attack and decay in that more detailed fashion here also. But say I wanted a very specific attack. Say I wanted to push this out and start to work with the staccato and stack different articulations with this, and we've mentioned this before, but it's so nice to be able to just go to long notes, find a marcato, any one you want, a performance marcato, and just click on it and say copy the slot. I want to copy this articulation and I want to add it to my short staccato, and I just click paste it. So now I have the performance marcato. If I click on this and activate it here, so now I have the performance marcato here, and I have my staccato, but I can quickly just have them mixed together, or I can mix them how I want in edit. I can take each layer and I say I want a lot of the or less of the staccato, but I really like the bite and crunch of that marcato attack, and really allows you to fine-tune each one of these articulations as they stack, so that you can take the body of the staccato and adjust the envelope, lessen the staccato attack, but you can take the marcato's attack, emphasize it more, bring it up in the mix, and you can also automate how these play together, how they could go back and forth, how, you know, you can automate every aspect of how these work together. But you're able to quickly grab one articulation, an aspect of it, and add it to, you know, another articulation. So you can kind of take the best of both worlds and have them working together. So that's very important. Another thing to look for in your sample player is, can I morph from one articulation to another, like a non-vibrato to a progressive vibrato really easily? So are there controllers where, you know, you can just morph back and forth using controller data? You know, you really want to have the ability to morph from one articulation to another seamlessly and back and forth, and so that you can play a note, that a long sustained note that starts with no vibrato ends up with a lot of vibrato, or vice versa. It's another thing to look for. Also, can I add humanization to any articulation really quickly? Again, with the humanization tab and sliders, you want your player to be able to add not just tuning humanization, but timing humanization, and to be able to automate it on sliders and deal with it really quickly and have it automate. And if you want to be able to go in fine detail and really change up how the humanize works on a very fine, you know, tunable type of situation. So humanization, you may have all your MIDI notes and you know, it's great. You have the right articulations and they're playing nicely, but towards the end you feel that you just want to add some more humanity. You have it playing in time, and maybe there's points where you have to add some back here with the stretch, so it's all in sync with your DAW, but it's, you know, maybe towards the end you feel that you can now, since you have it all synced and working nicely, now you feel that you want to bring back some humanity and variation into your performance because everything else is dead on. Then the ability to just crank up and add some humanization with automation, if you want, is really nice, especially if you're playing if you're moving from slow to very intense, and you want, just as a real player, as he's playing super intense, there tends to be more and more a little bit of the tuning may start to lose as the player's playing very vigorously. It may be not just because he's playing with such emotion, the actual tuning of that instrument. You may want to bring it a little bit out of alignment as his emotion goes up, just like in real life, adding some variables there as he brings in all that emotion. So you want to have the tools that allow that and allow that to be done automatically. The ability to customize any of these sliders with not just controllers and articulation, so that you can control one articulation that moves to another, or you can have an articulation that switches between fast and slower articulations. But you want to have your controller, automatic controllers, you want to control even over that. So what I mean is that you may have a controller controlling switching, but you want you want the ability to fine tune how your automation works, right? So that means envelopes, being able to flip your envelopes, being able to change your envelope types, and really bend and fine tune how your control works. So the point I'm making is, a lot of platforms have, you can assign a controller, be it speed, velocity, your slider on a keyboard, or a pitch bend pedal, or whatever. But there needs to be fine control and envelopes controlling how that automation works. So when you first, get a sample player, you won't really be aware of your needs to this degree, but later on, you'll really find that you have something working nicely, but you need that controller to be just fine-tuned and really, the flexibility of being able to even adjust how that responds to velocity exactly. How does it exactly respond to speed of the notes? And you need to get in there and actually fine-tune things. And sometimes you got to flip things over. Sometimes you have to adjust that automation. And sometimes it's, you need to just tweak it just right. Now here's another thing to be aware of in your search for the right platform. Does your player allow you the simplicity of moving your key switches, either turning them off completely, such as here, or being able to reassign them anywhere on your keyboard you want at any time quickly? So I can push them over here, I can push them over there, or I can turn them off, or I can reassign them to any note anywhere. That alone can be very worthwhile, because there are times where you're playing MIDI data which may have notes that by mistake trigger something that you don't want triggered, and you may want to move these key switches. Another important reason why you want to move key switches is because for setting up expression maps, I simply take all, whatever library that I'm using, and I quickly I set them up to be all on C0 or C1, whatever it is. So I move all my key switches to one area on the controller here, so that when I add if I go to a track and if I add an expression map, all I have to do is load my default expression map, and all the key switches will all line up, and I just load one expression map for everything. I never worry about, is there an expression map available for the new VSL strings or whatever. And I can also use the same expression maps on whatever library. So it's kind of, if you can move your key switches to anywhere on your keys very quickly, it allows you just to have one expression map and just to use it for everything and never have to worry about that. So yes, that is an aspect that you may want to be aware of for your platform. Being able to filter your articulations, another thing very handy, and you might not think about when you're first getting into this. you may have a double bass that has resonances and frequencies that build up or are annoying frequencies that you want to deal with on a level, articulation level. You don't want to have to make notes and worry about it later in post-processing or mixing. It's so handy just to be able to, if you do have, like, as an example, a double bass, I could simply go to performance and a filter, and either on a filter level, editing filters, or you can go to the mix page and the ability to go to any, I could assign the double bass to any channel and quickly assign an EQ and dip out the annoying frequencies on the double bass articulation. Maybe just the double bass staccato articulation. I can get rid of that annoying frequency on the articulation level. So that's very, very handy. Just another thing you don't have to write notes about and worry about in mixing later. And because you don't want to build up tracks with annoying frequencies, because one track will affect another track, which will affect how you actually construct your song. So you want to be able to take these annoying frequencies out on the articulation level and not do it later. Another thing to look for, do your legatos. Can you quickly, just in case your MIDI notes, you may have times where your legato, your MIDI notes are stacking up and you have chords, and you may quickly want to, still use legato, but can you switch to a poly legato? Can you have polyphonic legato with a click of a switch and not have to worry about dividing these up into separate tracks? Another thing that's very handy, being able to switch your legatos to a poly legato whenever you need. Very handy. Another thing is, can you create channels within your player so that not only can you mix, as I've stated, you can take single notes, staccatos, and you can mix, and I could add even another layer and another layer. So I'm able to mix on a articulation level, but can you also mix on a channel layer? And yes, you can. If you have the right platform, you can just add as many channels with specific articulations on new channels, and you can mix on that level also. So again, with mixing, it's important that, to have a platform that allows you to mix in any way you want. Again, like with the short note staccatos, we may want to mix on an articulation level, again, with taking the marcato attack and maybe the body of the détaché. We may want to add, stack all three of those in there. It's endless what you can stack. And you can add channels and have every one of those articulations on a different channel, and to be able to mix on an articulation level. Very important, really powerful. I don't know if anybody else really allows you to do that. Full mixing of articulations on separate channels. Or you can actually mix full instruments, or you can mix, in a case like the BBO, if I load up a full BBO here, you can mix full sections. So, they're all on separate channels, and you can add more channels and mix anything you want anywhere. So what I'm saying is, you can mix articulations if you want. You can mix just certain instruments against each other, or you can mix full sections of instruments against each other with panning. So mixing, very important to have a lot of flexibility there. And while talking about mixing, we can talk about mic placements and mixing the different microphones available. You want to be able to call up presets for your big mixes or small mixes, whatever. Any of these instruments will have presets, and that's great. So you can immediately go from a close, intimate sound with a double click, and now it loads up, a closer sound. And this applies to big orchestras like the BBO, or one instrument with one articulation. One click gives you close and intimate, another click gives you distant and different microphones. So the ability to use presets quickly that take you from close and intimate to far and spacious with huge variety of special effects and different room environments, all with one click. So, you know, not just mixing, but having presets that take you to where you want to go really quick. Very important also. And then finally, I would also suggest to, when you're looking for a player or a platform for your samples, you want to consider definitely stability, what it looks like. You'll be looking at it every day. Can you resize it quickly? And in this case with the VSL, you can resize it any way you want, and also change the to different, so you can read things clearer. So just wanted to mention that. Make sure, you know, you want to have an interface that is resizable, readable, and pleasant to look at. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the new players that are so dark and have so much wasted space that isn't reconfigurable. You know, if we go back to the basic violin, I could easily just change this and have, you know, very little wasted space, and it all just compacts nicely. Or I can, you know, really, I can fine tune things to the way I want. If I want to be into mixing, I can just drag this out and I can create, you know, channel after channel after channel and have all my mixing here. I mean, there's a big plus to be able to configure your interface that looks pleasant, uses colors to a maximum degree to help you with key switching and identifying. Like if I zoom back out, you'll see that colors come into play. If I activate all these slots, colors come into play because I can take any group of these and change it to any color. That's just one of the things you can do, is change colors and use color to my advantage. So not only can you resize, reshape, and recolor everything, everything's configurable. I mean, you really have to take your hat off, the tip of the hat to a UI, the people that created the UI. It's really good. Other aspects also are, like I said, stability and how easy it is on your CPU. All of this is great, but if it hogs your CPU and shuts down your full DAW session when you simply open a few instances, that's not good either. So, you know, you want the stability, you want it to be easy on your CPU, and you really don't want to be limited, and you want to have a player that gives you as much flexibility as possible. Hope you enjoyed this kind of focused look on what to look for if you're looking for a sample player, and what, you know, platforms have to offer. You want to pick the right one, because not just because of money, but the time that you're going to put into. If you get onto one platform, it's going to cost some money, but you're going to have to invest time in learning that platform. And if you find out 2 months later, as you go deeper into projects, and you will learn and grow, and find that it just doesn't meet your needs, you're going to have to put it for sale at half price. But even worse, you're going to have to buy a new platform and learn that new platform, which means, again, time to learn it. So if you're going to take time to research platforms, and you know, take your time to learn what you're going to need in the future also, because you don't want to take the wrong train from the station. You want to get on the right train, so that you don't waste time and money in the future. Nobody knows what's coming in the future, but I have a feeling that the Synchron player will be supported, you know, very well in the future. It's just a system that is all set up for the future. That's my point of view. This whole video is my point of view. I don't work for VSL. I get nothing from them. If there's a better platform out there in the future, I will look at that. And if it looks right, I will jump on that platform, or perhaps just use one of their instruments because it helps what I'm doing now. So it's not about being a fanboy, because fanboys really kind of ruin companies anyway. companies need to be aware of aspects they need to change. They need to be aware of the community. And when you become a fanboy, you really kind of just say that, oh, it's all great, don't worry about the future. And that's not what this is about. It's about finding tools that work and passing on information. And if new tools come around the corner, great. We'll find what's good about those and jump on that, if that bandwagon, if it's the right thing to do. But if you're new to orchestration, definitely look at the Synchron platform, because it is a platform. It's a whole system. If you're into orchestrational sounds and instruments and wanting to learn and grow in the future, I don't know if there's a better platform out there. I welcome comments because I certainly don't know everything, and I'm learning every day. But I hope this video helps you to think about what the direction you're going and where you're putting your money, but more importantly, where you're going to be putting your time. So have a great day wherever you're at, and we'll see you at the next video.